Do you guys feel like time is accelerating at an unnatural pace? Like,
of course.
Can you break it down for me, Great Wise One?
What, me? No. I mean, I think it's just a reality.
Do you remember when Maduro was captured and thrown into Brooklyn prison? Like, it feels like ancient history now. It happened a month ago.
But isn't that an example of time moving slower?
No.
You just said it feels like 4 months, but it was only 2 months. I don't know.
I think what's unknown is how much of this is an impact of our current political system and the incentives of it.
And the media landscape.
I don't know if it's the feed or that there's just so much news or that I'm old.
Well,
I don't know what it is.
I think X is the heart of all of this. Like,
are we going back to we're all media gooning, basically? We're
gooning. It's all gooning.
The media gooning. Let's get started. Welcome to People vs. Algorithms.
Let's goon it up, Brian.
Morrissey. Troy Young, Gooner in Chief, is here.
No,
Alex
Brian Morrissey,
Schleifer.
living proof that AI is not that good. Very angry at AI. Very angry at AI this week, Brian.
Thank you for teeing that up, because I have had some, kind of negative experiences with our robotic future. It started with my first Waymo ride. I took Waymo finally, and
in Miami, though, not in San Francisco, correct?
Yeah, in Miami. And it insisted on picking me up in the wrong place so it could do two U-turns. And that's dumb. And then it was a little bit thrilling until we were only going less than 2 miles. We hit an emergency situation.
Were you alone, Brian?
I was alone. And one of...
Did you have any dark thoughts in the backseat?
No, in a very... Stop butting in. In a very Miami situation, there was a yacht fire. And Waymo, they were closing off lanes, and Waymo was stuck in the left lane, and it had to get over. And I was like, Waymo, you got to be aggressive. I was like, Waymo, you have to. Nobody respects you. This is Miami. They're crazy drivers. It's like actually proven. Waymo was just stuck there. It was stuck behind a police car.
Now, were you voicing these things at the Waymo?
I was yelling at Waymo.
So I feel sorry for the Waymo, because I feel like it's like you sending me texts about my AI machine and you getting really mad at it.
I get mad at the AIs. Eventually, the cop was directing traffic around to turn people around, and it was trying to direct Waymo. I was like, this is ridiculous. The cop is like getting increasingly agitated at Waymo not following its commands. I mean, Miami is like a law and order place, just comply is what any atrocity that happens here. The Instagram comments will be like, just comply, bro. And so this cop was doing the just comply, bro. It was not working on this robot. Eventually I had to hit the button, get the human to take over and get me the hell out of there, because
you
I
were
was
ushered
trapped.
out of there by someone in the Philippines driving the car.
Pretty much.
In Miami.
Yeah. And yes.
We don't live in strange times.
Yeah. And similarly, and we're not going to spend more than 5 minutes on this. Your vibe coding.
Sorry. Just before we move on, I can't. Why would a yacht fire stop traffic? Isn't that
because it was on Indian River?
You know what, Alex? I love about your first principle thinker, man.
So these yachts, they're not really. It was like a pontoon boat. It was even worse because it was a sponsor activation yacht. Again, this is Miami. So it was filled with
what a
ad tech.
hellscape.
It was filled with ad tech and martech people. And it was across from the possible event here in Miami Beach. And they had a little electrical fire in Indian River. It's not like, it's not like Cannes here. Let's be real. But because of the emergency vehicles to put it out, like they had to block off the southbound lane. Maybe they didn't. I think they could have had one lane to get through, but whatever.
All right. I'm sorry. Yeah. Thanks for clarifying.
You know what? I just realized you would have been great as the traffic guy on radio, southbound lane.
Traffic and transit on the T's, was it?
Brian Morrissey, KX610.
Those were the good old days, 1010 wins. So give us an update on your robot, because it is, I think, equally frustrating and thrilling.
I know you don't want to do fucking AI corner every week or like vibe coding corner. The update is you added a terrific feature, which is really what's supposed to happen. You listen to the users, you add a feature. You weren't feeling it off the feed aggregation of just all this tsunami of news coming at you. You wanted a place where you could be heard. So I created a feature called Field Notes, where you can now text your thoughts, your takes, your intimate observations directly into the machine, including links, including images. After a really protracted period of stumbling and really bad attention to detail, you figured out how to text to a number. Alex got it immediately, of course. AB complained that he wasn't on the list. That's so annoying. Now we have our own mini Twitter. That's what we have. We have our own little Twitter.
I think
right
what was remarkable for me is like we talked about this, and like an hour and a half later, I was getting out of an Uber because I learned my lesson, and you text me and it was live, and it wasn't like live I was like, oh, this looks like an actual product. And again, AI gives the appearance of like sophistication. I'm sure in the background, behind the scenes, it's a nest of security laws and whatnot.
It's true. I'm sure it's a bowl of spaghetti. But a couple things. I had wired a lot of it up before, Brian.
Okay.
And the hardest part of getting that done is the bridge to a phone connection so you can text in. Those are typically done by API providers like Twilio. Twilio's the big one, right? I am working on something that I will share with the audience, which is basically a combination of group chat and American Idol. And it will be a new offering from the great people at People versus Algorithms. And it will offer you a high value, very brief experience on your phone if you choose to engage in a text relationship with us. We'll send out takes. You respond. You vote. Best one goes to everybody, and it'll be a really cool feature.
We'll feature it here. We're going to feature it here. This is a flywheel.
Yeah, this is a content flywheel.
Is there going to be a website component outside of just advertising the number?
Yeah, there will be a website component that's under construction. It's actually completed. I've shown you the preview, Alex.
Yep.
And there will also be a report on the winning question, sort of McKinsey style, that will bring additional insights to the people that need them.
Okay, when are we getting this into the people's hands? Because I've been doing marketing. I know you called me a dumbass because I didn't do QA, which was a little offensive. But I know you've got some zins. Zins are like leading to cortisol spikes. But I've been doing marketing. I was doing marketing at that dinner that night, right when that thing came out. So.
Yeah, no, I can't decide if you become more or less annoying, actually, in your new kind of incarnation. But here's the thing. I want to build stuff that gets people more involved in this, not just us. So I'm sort of determined to do that and kind of go post comment, post forum, post whatever, and take it right to the people with text. So that's what we're trying to do. As a testament to the power of that, I'm now locked in on a mattress, Brian, because last week I asked for mattress recommendations. I did it at the bottom of the episode, and I got some really good insights from people. And the big takeaway is don't buy a mattress out of a box. Do not buy a box mattress. So
really?
And
then
I've got a couple of good recommendations. I'm going to go live.
Well, that's all our potential advertisers fucking out 30% of them out the window.
Well, I got one for you about Purple. Is Purple in a box?
Yeah,
it's $3,000. That's an expensive mattress, isn't it? I don't know what I spent on a mattress.
$3,000?
Isn't that a lot for a mattress?
No, a lot for a mattress is $100,000. You spent
both those statements can be true. I think a lot for a mattress is actually $1 million.
I was going to make a cancelable statement.
Good, we stopped you.
You spend a third of your life on the mattress. There's no amount too big,
Fair enough.
Maybe.
I don't think I spend that much on the mattress, and I think I can afford a more expensive mattress than either of you.
Wow.
A flex.
And I have a farm.
Yeah.
We make our own mattresses here.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. And you pay at a union wage as well. Yeah.
Also, on that note, I did get, I've been out among the people at Possible, ran into a few PVA super fans. A couple takeaways. We get some regular, feedback. One is people do want more female energy on this podcast, I got to say.
Yeah, I think we should get rid of AB and bring in a female banker.
Emily Sundberg was, she was a big hit, so a lot of people
Oh,
like
it's
Emily.
great when
Maybe she
she's
can be a
on.
recurring character. So we'll have to work on that. The other one is
Wouldn't it be great if you guys actually worked on stuff and we could work on that?
yeah,
We'll have to work on that. Let's work on how we work on things.
your regular attacks on LinkedIn have been going over like a fart in an elevator. A lot of people don't like them. LinkedIn is where workers are, okay? And you're showing your privilege because the real street fighters are out on LinkedIn. They're marketing. They're congratulating Judy from HR on her promotion. There's nothing
Yeah,
wrong.
they're
with
also self-congratulating over on LinkedIn. So,
Possible-
Brian, can I ask a question? Because you start this kind of stuff. You sort of you start this LinkedIn hate, and then Alex and I
was
build
gonna
on
say,
it.
I don't like teaming up with Troy here, but you set it up for everyone.
Yeah,
we're
and
like,
then
yeah.
you come back and you're like, these people
know.
think you're arrogant.
it. I know.
Can I ask you a question? Like, what do you think of LinkedIn, Sanctimonious One?
I'm locked out of LinkedIn right now. So it might be a flex, but
Why are you-
honestly,
why are you
because
locked
the
out of
product is
LinkedIn?
terrible. Like my issue with LinkedIn is just that like they need to just start all over with the product. Can't they just rebuild it? Like I can only imagine their code base must be worse than your vibe coded code base because the product is just they got to make it better. They got to make it a better product. They
Yeah, but you're the kind of guy when you
lock-in.
get locked out, you don't figure it out. You just throw your hands up. Like there's an answer here. That's kind of I noticed that this week in our QA sessions.
Exactly. I have my flaws. Let's get into AI power games. The OpenAI Elon Musk trial is happening. It's interesting to see this covered almost like as a celebrity trial. And I think that is coming for Silicon Valley. TMZ has amazingly arrived in Washington, D.C. It's perfect for them. And they got to go to Silicon Valley. The best time was when Nick Denton moved out to Silicon Valley and was doing Valleywag and causing problems out there. It needs to be brought. Silicon Valley, the TV show needs to be brought back, but TMZ, Silicon Valley, absolutely has to happen. This trial will end up being a battle of the personalities. I love these trials because Discovery is amazing. You get to see the text messages, you get to see the emails, you get to
There
see-
is a new Silicon Valley TV show, by the way, called The Audacity.
Have you watched
If
it?
you haven't seen it. Yes, I have watched 2 episodes.
I don't think it's very good.
Is
No,
it
but
satirical?
yes.
Okay.
It's the people that did Succession or one of the writers.
Well, one of them. I think it's yeah.
So this trial is happening. There's a report that just came out this week from the Wall Street Journal that, surprise, OpenAI is missing its financial targets, its ChatGPT user targets. I think Sam Altman telegraphed this, as did Sarah Fryer, the CFO. I mean, she put up that little trial balloon about backstopping. It was like, uh-oh. And then they scrambled backstopping their data center investments that the government would. This is all coming before it has to do an IPO this year. And who knows where it will go in the IPO queue, because you've got a lot of other big companies that are going out. Anthropic is going to be going out. SpaceX is looking for a 1.5 trillion valuation. I don't know. This is an interesting time for OpenAI. Alex, you have a bold call. You put it in the field notes. What is it?
Well, I was trying to be extra spicy, but yeah, I'm not sure. What did I say? I'm not sure Sam Altman is going to be CEO of OpenAI by next year.
That's a bold call. Give us your case.
Well, we've seen a lot of executive departures. We're hearing about tensions with the CFO. The money isn't, the revenue targets aren't being hit, which is fine if your narrative is matching it and the narrative is starting not to match it. The one thing that's holding it together is that a lot of companies have signed very big checks at OpenAI, to try to get a seat in. And I don't know. I mean, as they move to go public, there's going to have to be a lot more transparency, and I don't think the picture is going to look very good. The product isn't in the global consciousness as it once was, and Claude is, and Anthropic is running away with a lot of the enterprise business. So how confident am I? I'm not 100% confident, but it's not looking great. I think there's maybe like an Uber situation going on where at some point people want to change the story, and the story being less about Sam and more about OpenAI, and we'll see what happens in that court case. But anything could happen. I don't even know, how you pick a jury for a court case like this, right?
I think that's a sound take, and I think there's a lot of money in this company, and at some point, if they miss their number, someone's going to say, bring in a better operator. And that Sam has done a great job at kind of willing this thing to where it is now, and we need to kind of really focus on growing users, growing engagement, growing revenue per user, all that stuff, and more sort of less whimsically managing our product slate, which I think has been the biggest problem. But I want to ask a different question, Brian, if you don't mind me sort of hijacking your
Why would
role. Yeah.
I can become executive chairman emeritus of PVA.
Does Musk have a point? I mean, how do you feel about this trial? Does Musk have a point? And what does winning look like? Answer that for me, Brian.
Oh, the trial is going to show that Sam Altman is a complete snake. But we already know that. It reminds me of Trump, like being able to shoot someone in Fifth Avenue. Like everyone already knew that Trump was a scoundrel, and so that protected him from the revolution, the revelations, the Billy Bush, the grab him, et cetera. And I think that's the same thing here. It's going to be the trial will show that he's an untrustworthy guy, a little slippery. But it's also well known. Like, who's going to be shocked by that?
So the judge here's got a big job because the jury verdict is advisory. And then the judge has to figure out, what to do with this. Like, what is winning? So what do you think winning is? How does it resolve?
Oh, I don't know.
They give Musk his $44
No,
million.
I don't think that's the trial by Musk seems to be set up to cripple OpenAI in some capacity. Right.
He's just going to tie him up.
Well, but the judge isn't going to do that, Alex. The judge isn't going to impair the B Corp's operating function because I think that would be a step too far. I think they'll give Musk back his money, maybe double it to $100 million. Musk says he's going to give it to charity. He's going to say, look, I won in court. I made my point. And the harshest thing that she could do is insist that Sam and Brockman were dubious leaders and have them removed.
I don't think that's going to happen. This is
I don't
America.
think so either.
You fight it out like on the field. We just don't do that. Maybe in Europe. Not going to happen. And you're just going to lawyer up. It doesn't even matter. Like, I would imagine if I was like a Sam Altman, I'd be like, okay, I'm just going to hire a bunch of like incredibly like vicious and expensive lawyers, and we'll just play it out. We'll appeal and appeal.
The jury selection must be interesting, which is like they're probably trying to just balance it out with people who dislike both of them equally because it's just.
But Alex, how do you feel when Brian calls your people pussies?
What? I didn't say that. When did I say that?
This is America. This isn't Europe. We fight it out here.
I'm going to Europe tonight. I love Europe.
No, I'm used to it here. I mean, the fact that corporations, I love it. It's like it's socialism for corporations. It's great.
Yeah, America's going in one direction. Europe is going in a different direction.
Okay.
I
if
like
it. If a corporation gets sick, it gets plenty of money and care.
Yeah. But you know what? Europeans, let me just say, Europeans always go to that. But the reality that we all know is that if you have enough money in America, you get amazing health care. Okay. And that is
you know why? Because what I found out is you get to fly to the south of France and have your care over there. When we had to go to the clinic in the south of France, they told us actually a lot of Americans come here for healthcare. A lot of rich Americans.
I got a colonoscopy in Serbia. Why not?
I'm not saying that Europe is any better. I just don't know if in this case the trial is going to be interesting because I think it's whatever comes out of the trial. I think it's another attack on Sam Altman's kind of reality distortion field, which was never it's the thing that they used to say Steve Jobs had, but it was never as strong as Steve Jobs. And I think that chickens are coming home to roost here where like Troy said, lots of bad product decisions, right? Like they had to do code red, all the products that they announced, they had to, that Sora thing, they launched a product. It was highly successful for a while, but then they shut it down. And they spent a ton of money on that, and they likely shut it down because they were burning through cash just running it. Those types of decisions, I think, over time start, kind of impacting the confidence. And I wonder what the confidence in the company is of Sam at this stage.
Yeah.
But, I don't know.
I find the code red used to be strange because I just remember from A Few Good Men when it was meant that you were going to beat the shit out of someone in the middle of the night. But I guess Silicon Valley uses it differently.
I mean, Silicon Valley uses violence and sports analogies all the time, right?
They just seem to use it differently.
When you're 150 pounds and sit on a chair all day, you're going to want to say things like code red, or I can't find any more analogies, but it was full of sports and war analogies.
Even in coding protocols like Bash.
Yeah. Yeah.
Let's talk about the next interface. This is something that, Troy, your little machine, what are we calling it? Is it a machine or is it a brain? What is it?
Let's call it a brain. That sounds more impressive.
I think of it as like a brain. I think of it as like an external hard drive. That's what I want it to become, because I can't find everything in my hard drive. And so I want to contribute things to the external hard drive.
Keep using it, Brian, and keep submitting comments, and the good product people over here at PVA HQ will make it magical.
Okay.
Yeah, at some point we got to stop teasing Troy's magical software and share and show people.
The problem with sharing it with too many people is that I don't know if the other people in PVA Inc. want to share the bills, because it is very, very token hungry.
Yeah, no, but we just talked about Sam Altman, Troy. All you need to do is just start talking to people, raise some money here.
Totally.
We'll subsidize it. All of AI is subsidized. How much would it
One
cost?
of the things that it does.
I just have to set up the right caching layer would be fine.
One of the things that it does.
It's so weird seeing Troy talk like that.
Caching layers. I'm trying to steer it away from this. One of the things that it does is pull out some of the frameworks that emerge from these incoherent conversations, because there are some nuggets in there. And one that we've regularly come back to is that, the commanding heights of the digital economy are at the interface. If you control the interface layer, you control lots of stuff. I mean, look at Google.
Do you know what that tag is in our knowledge base? Interface is everything is the tag.
Well, maybe we need to change that, because maybe interface is not going to be everything in this wild world of
Well, you just
AI.
messed up the knowledge base by saying that right now.
Naval Ravikant, he's one of these Silicon Valley philosopher types. There's several of them.
I love these guys. I love these guys.
Yeah, I get them confused sometimes, but he had an
They were
interesting...
the big mouths in college philosophy classes,
Yeah, there's philosophers, and then they got the debate club kids. David Sachs is not a philosopher. He's a forensics kid.
He's more feral than a philosopher.
Yeah, no, he loves to argue. But he had this idea that the interface is commoditizing. He said, "Oh my God, everything is cooked. Now Apple is cooked." He said Apple is dead.
I was looking forward to hearing Alex's reaction to his philosophizing.
Yeah, that's what I'm teeing it up for Alex.
Well, thanks for teeing it up. I live such a happier life now that I'm not on Twitter or read stuff from Naval that I have to analyze. So I don't know how much.
This is your answer. This is your setup.
No.
We hand you the biggest interface question of our time, and this is your setup.
I heard on Blue Sky. Is this true on Blue Sky? You can't say anything mildly complimentary about AI, or you'll be drummed out of there. Is that true?
Yeah. Blue Sky
You get code red, the old school code red.
No, but I feel like the demise of the interface is greatly exaggerated, because what does that even mean, right? Where is it, to simplify it, is it the Star Trek future where you're just talking to the computer and shit happens? Right? Is that it?
Maybe.
I mean, that's the problem with that philosophizing is it is that you can make grand statements that are of which the boundaries are so fluid that you can say what the fuck you want. What does that mean? I actually think it might turn out that Apple, who's last in the AI race, might be best positioned because the AI is commoditized, right? That the brain itself becomes commoditized. And the hardware being the ultimate container of the interface, being the ones who win long term.
So his contention, Alex, I think is something like this. Apple, to this point, wins because they elegantly combine great hardware with software, with a software interface.
Yeah.
And that software interface controls this beautiful device, and then ladders up to the app store, and the app is the apps are the ways that we use this device.
And they take tolls all along the way.
That
All the way.
if you're in a position where even if you have nice hardware like Samsung, and you don't have, nice software and services like Apple does, all the way from, like I said, from the OS to Apple Pay, you risk losing all your margin on the hardware, and that AI is going to disrupt the software layer. That's the observation. And
Right,
I
but
think it's and so what's your answer to that?
Well, I still think AI needs to be delivered and carried around with people, by people. Like, I think the phone remains by far the best device for AI. And that is because you can't translate every interface or every action that you do into another device today, or anything that is like kind of is ambient. So we're social creatures. I'm gonna take a picture. I'm gonna show it to you. I'm going to want to read the news when I'm on a subway.
Well,
right?
I think basically he's saying that everything is being commoditized, and I think this is a depressing sort of idea, is that distribution is sort of the last moat, and that the companies winning today aren't the ones with the best products. They're the ones who have direct relationships with an audience. The email list is a moat.
Right, which is why I think
so he listed out,
TRV at 1 billion.
Contrary actually to Alex's point, later on in the piece, I think he listed out, or on the podcast, I don't even know what it was because someone had recapped it, but listed out the things that would differentiate you long term. We pointed at many of these things in the email last week. It was distribution, but it was also network effects, which is people using your product. It was data flywheels, which is basically, having proprietary data. It was hardware integration, which is what we're talking about. It was brand, which obviously Apple has. It was community, which is what Alex is talking about, using it as a tool to connect with people, and kind of regulatory complexity that allows you to do all that. And I think that those are still hard things to just assume that another company is going to take away from you, or they become commoditized.
I actually, my worry is actually the opposite. My worry is that the operating system owners become the new kind of platforms for distribution for everything. Let's say right now, if you want an analogy, media has become this environment where the people who control the platforms really start just building relationships with millions of people creating content rather than these media brands and stuff like that. They don't need to negotiate with them. They don't really need to pay them any money because creating media has become so easy, and in media distribution is everything. So we're all signing, deals with the devil, putting our shit for free on YouTube and Threads and X and stuff like that. Building apps and building that type of infrastructure still has a moat. If you remove that moat, and then on top of that, most of your interactions start being handled by an AI, which is going to be accessed, whether Google on Android or Google on the iPhone, it's going to be accessed by a button that you click on those phones. Those companies are going to control that button. So you'll have, in this possible future, you'll have millions of apps created by people just for fun that are going out and replacing, what billion-dollar companies could do, and all the core features that AI can provide. Plus,
it's an argument for the power of the platform. It makes sense.
But the platform power keeps moving up, and at the end of the day, there's only Google and Apple.
Can you imagine, Alex, a world though where that advantage that Apple has, which is seemingly really hard to displace, gets whittled away because OpenAI comes out with a phone that's like a completely new construct, and it's a beautiful device because Johnny Ive designed it, and it feels good, and you can talk on it and all that, but the interface layer is just a completely different paradigm. And usually what happens is people try to do that, but they stick a little close to the old brief, and everybody's like, why would I change? But what if the brief was significantly wide so that you created a new phone that really challenged the existing paradigm? Do you think you could get a lot of people to is there a way that we could get a lot of people to use it?
I think everything is possible, but I think the way we do these predictions sometimes is that we looked at what happened with the iPhone, thinking that Apple, out of nowhere, dropped this new device that took over the world. Apple had, a couple of decades of building software and operating systems and training engineers, both at Apple and outside of Apple, and had infrastructure behind it. And I think it's very hard for a company to come out and say, hey, here's this 0 to 1 product that's going to replace this. Secondly, the iPhone was solving a very real problem that people could see they had, which is, oh man, I really wish I could carry my computer around with me. The internet is cool. I wish I could do all this internet thing and send an email not being at my desk, right? Because even laptops then weren't very portable, right? It was very obvious that there was a capability there that's like, oh shit, when that works, it'll be great. And the first iPhone was terrible. And it took 3 generations to actually getting it to that promise and building the App Store and stuff like that. What I don't see anyone coming with is like, man, once they do that pin, or once they do that earring, or once they do the slate, it can't be a marginal improvement of being slightly better and being AI first, because it's software. I mean, the iPhone can be AI first. Right now, I have a hardware button on my iPhone. I press it and it launches AI. What else are you going to do for me?
It's interesting that we still call this a phone, even though people rarely use it actually as a
100%.
phone.
But it's,
But OpenAI apparently is building a quote unquote phone. So that is apparently happening. Meta is still working on these glasses. New York Times had an interesting review of them. I still think these things are socially rejected. The early adopters matter, and the early adopters were like the most despicable people in the world, like those streamer types that are running around Miami.
Oh, I have a pair.
And Troy.
Yeah, exactly.
And so that I think the social, I think a lot of the things that people are trying to do with coming up with a alternative to the phone run up against them being just simply antisocial. That AI pin was weird.
Oh, there's a pin coming. There's more pins.
I've been
the pin energy is strong in the universe.
There are some technologies that drop, right? And the world immediately says, oh, this is very appealing and I can't wait for it to get better. If you remember when computer games dropped and you could plug this thing into a TV and you had the Atari or the ColecoVision or something like that. I mean, it looked like trash, but people found it appealing. They would buy it and use it. However, they've been trying to sell us VR headsets, and you can buy a beautiful VR sets for a few $100s today, but yet that hasn't met adoption. There's certain things that like they're not going to be solved by just making them better, right? And part of that could be the problem with this. I think the problem with the glasses is that they're by Meta, particularly. Like I think glasses by Apple would have much, much bigger adoption. I think people just don't want Facebook glasses on. I mean, that's whatever he tries to do, like he can't get away with that. People don't like Zuckerberg. People don't like Meta. People don't like Facebook. They're not going to put fucking glasses on. And it was smart to go with Ray-Ban, but it's not.
One other like interface question, because I've noticed that Uber is really going for this super app concept. Now, I mean, Airbnb wanted to do a super app too. I guess they still want to do. Super apps never seem to work in America for some unknown reason. They're big in China. There's a lot of things that are big in China that don't work here. But Uber has added hotels through Expedia. I don't fully get it, but when you go into that Uber app now, there's a lot of stuff in there. There's a lot you can do. Why don't super apps work, Alex?
I think because there's a cultural thing where people have been trained to use apps for specific behaviors, and we're noticing that. Like, I think definitely there are certain buckets that people use when Google tried to put more social features into Gmail with Google Plus. I think a lot of research came out that people really want to separate these parts of their lives. Like, this is the email, this is my personal shit. People build different types of trusts within apps, and then there are certain things that are intended for larger transactions and smaller transactions. So there's a lot of kind of bucketing that Western audiences seem to do with their products.
Or WeChat came out of the gate and established behaviors early in China by integrating
that was my next point.
Finance with communication. Hi, I'm Alex Schleifer, and I'm Austrian and French.
Or Austrian? I thought it was Swiss.
Yeah, I keep surprising Brian where I'm from.
He's not Swiss.
Where I'm from. I'm not
He's
Swiss.
Austrian.
I don't know why
So-
I have that.
The Austrian are
it's
like
the
Swiss.
German and
the
French thing.
Austrians, what I discovered last night is, or in coming to understand, is the Austrians have a great sense of humor. They're
Really?
like
Great.
Germans with it. They're like Germans with a sense of humor.
No, but I think you were right. I think you're right, Troy. It's also a timing thing. Like if you went, when I went to India, it was interesting to see just what happens when the first exposure to the internet and computing for a lot of people is the phone, right? They went and especially much of the US transitioned from computers to the phone. So the behavior of opening an app to do the thing also was just something that was ingrained in people. I think you can do it though. I mean, I think iMessage, Apple Messages is kind of used, pretty openly to do payments, to do certain types of things. I mean, we're seeing little steps there. And something like Uber, once you have, they started merging Uber Eats and the Uber kind of Drive product, right, into one product. And once that happens, I think you start training people into, I could do more stuff that are kind of in a similar category in there. And so Uber is actually pretty well positioned. They have a pretty limited range of extensions that will make sense in there. But, shopping is one of them, which they've added already. Hotels seems to make sense.
Well, I think they also have to do it, Brian, because the existential risk for Uber is that the Waymo people take over their position in transportation, and the way that Uber survives is by being a utility on top of those companies. And that means they become like the booking app, the booking for cars, booking for meals, booking for hotels.
And this is and where you have to then work with Uber. But this is where like going the X is cooked narrative that happens a lot always bothers me, because it always compares something in a fixed state to something in a future state, right? Like if you look at it today, Waymo will entirely take over Uber. If Uber does nothing for the next 15 years, everybody will be using Waymo. The fact is that if Uber becomes the app of choice as it is, or continues to be the app of choice for booking these things, then, things like Waymo won't have a choice but work with Uber. So that's probably part of the strategy.
DoorDash is also, a competitor here. They're trying to become a super app too. They're already like benefiting from Waymo because they've got the dashers to close Waymo doors for it. We do live in the future. It's just the dumbest possible version.
Well, everything is going to be turned into gig workers, even the robots, and that's everybody. There's going to be two platforms, Google and Apple, and we're all going to be gig workers for them. That's what's
all
going
right.
to happen.
Let's talk about media's next chapter. People Inc. is now the entirety of IAC. This is a sad ending of a chapter. Maybe not a sad ending. This is how the internet works. IAC, a weird holding company that existed on the internet that housed Expedia and lots of other properties. And now it's down to People Inc. They just renamed Dotdash Meredith, which was named Dotdash, which was previously named About.com, which had been originally named the mining company. Anyway, now this is the entire company. I know, this is the internet. It's like insane.
We should get Neil Fogel back on to explain what happened.
He's had 5 different business cards.
Well, he can argue with me and say everything is fine.
Well, Neil is out on the podcast circuit every now and again. He was on a podcast last month where, he made a really good point. He was on Peter Kafka's channel's podcast, it's a great podcast, and talked about how they used to have one playbook for basically 40 brands because they were an internet business. They had a bunch of guide sites and whatnot. It was very search driven. Obviously, 75% of their traffic was from search. Now, 25% of their traffic comes from Google. They've managed this transition fairly well. That's a difficult one. But now they're down to basically to 9 brands.
Better than
9
most.
brands that matter. And one of the points that he made that I found interesting was that a big difference is you have to run different playbooks for each brand. Like you can't, and this is one of the challenges of media. It's just so it's so anti-efficiency. You can't just like run one playbook across the entire portfolio. Each brand's got to be treated uniquely. It's like Back to the Future because that's the
but
way
then how do you get
always
like,
was.
maybe Troy understands that if you have to do that, like I'm asking this a little bit to be to set you up a little bit, but what is the point of a big media company if you still have to handle every brand like a special little unique
I don't know. That's a
snowflake?
good point. I mean, Troy, you lived through this, right? I mean, wasn't the whole notion of the media OS
You were
and
once
whatnot
a
to
Neil Fogel.
centralize as much as possible? You wouldn't do that today, right?
I think you have to balance in these companies what you centralize versus what you don't. There's the obvious things like finance and probably media sales that, but even media sales needs to kind of thrive by being closer to the brand and kind of manufacturing things in cahoots with the people that make the product that you sell. But, still having 9 playbooks means that some are more subscription centric, some are more event centric, some are more commerce centric, and I think that you're basically a kitchen at the center with different recipes that you help the, different operating groups of brands, cook up. So I think, you can still get economies out of a media conglomerate. Obviously you can.
I think it's more like a food hall.
Sure. Yeah. That's the answer. This is boring though. So let's move on.
All right. Nothing more.
I'm more
with that.
interested.
I thought but now I forgot that Troy's are like our tech reporter, so
That's true.
he doesn't want to talk about
He's
stupid
bored by
media
media.
anymore.
Can we talk
Well,
about?
no, I'm more
baby
interested
news?
in
This is-
what's more interested in what parts of the kind of media stack will be replaced by AI. That's what I'm interested in.
Okay.
Because I think that, if not reporting, you get very close to reporting. And I think that, even AI will come to aspects of reporting. Certainly AI does a great job on aggregation. News summaries, AI does a great job there. And so it's
when you say replace, you mean replace?
I'm saying that the whole stack I'm building is meant to make a singular media person much more efficient by augmenting them in ways that uses technology smartly with the human in the loop. And I think you can do a whole lot with very few people.
Yeah, it sounds like you're raising a Series A, Troy.
Yeah, it's happening.
I'm
It's
not
happening,
raising-
guys. We're gonna make some money.
Casey Newton from Platformer had a post where he said he's basically abandoning aggregation as part of the Platformer's model and focusing more on original reporting. And he said that like basically, look, he's deep in Silicon Valley. I mean, his like boyfriend works for Anthropic, so he's fully AI pilled. And so I always feel like there's a difference between how people in that world look at AI and what is coming versus normal people.
It is quite a whiplash to listen to The and then Hard Fork back to back. It's like there's like two entirely different realities about what AI is bringing to the table.
Because The Verge is like very anti-AI, right?
It's anti-AI. I mean, it's not. It's weirdly kind of dismissive about capabilities that, and I don't want to paraphrase too much, but it's literally saying, well, it just doesn't work. And I'm like, well, I just got it to work. Like it does work, I think it.
Have you met my coder friend, Troy?
Exactly. Like literally.
Yeah,
This
Troy
is,
just shipped a feature while you were
Exactly.
complaining that AI does nothing.
Yeah. Well, The Verge
No,
is against a lot of things, I feel like.
It is. I mean, I like
The
The Verge.
The Verge is cooked. It's cooked.
Well, they are cooked as a classic page view publisher, so they'll be jettisoned.
I mean,
to
they
some
moved.
AI
moved
chop
to-
shop.
I want to make
Movie
this
subscription?
Hard Fork is a good podcast, though, I have to say. And, they're the sort of NPR of New York Times podcasts, like wherein there is kind of verbal affectations and character development that make them like the car guys of tech.
Yeah, why don't we do that?
They're like, I'm Casey Newton from the
Yeah,
Platformer.
now it's Sniper. Ha, Troy, what's going on?
Well, you need
I
characters.
can't even-
You need characters these days.
Take us into character talk. Tell us about Graham Plattner and Ben Sasse. Sasse.
SaaS. Okay, so well, final thing I would like your input on is the clipping discourse has continued, and then it turns out, oh surprise, Clavicular uses 1,600 paid clippers to give the appearance of popularity because optics are everything now. And I think this feeds into the fact that it's impossible to tell what is quote unquote real now, and I don't even know if it matters. Like everything is artificial, everything feels like a psyop on the internet. Clipping is just the latest. I don't know if it matters that much. It is the latest growth hack. Threads, remember the like Twitter thread? Like there's all kinds of growth hacks. But am I wrong? Does clipping matter? I don't know why we're talking about it that much.
Well, it does matter because it feeds the algorithms, which kind of defines what people think is happening. I think we're all living through this mass delusion where we think things are really like where we feel like the rest of the world is listening to absolute fucking psychopaths who smash their bones up to look a certain way, and then but our reality is that we never meet any of these people. We never meet them. They don't seem to exist in any way but the fact that they're all over social media. And I think that it is as much of a technology story as it is like a psychological one. Like what has happened to us? Like you keep being sent stuff. It's like, look at what people are doing. It's like, how many people do this? How big is this really? And what these folks are doing, and it's not only that you pay people, you also need to have a special amount of charisma. Your story or whatever you're pushing needs to be enough of kind of like a trigger for people to hate, love, whatever. And then you can maintain, it's like what those clippers do is that you catch that wave and then you maintain that wave for longer than other people who might catch the wave because that happens. But clipping is everything. It's, it's the only way we can grow our podcast, for example, which is why we do clips. And it is the SEO of this age. And it is also creating a mass delusion.
Right. So like with clipping, like everyone is going to be using this. So the effectiveness inevitably just goes down. Like everyone is going to be flooding all of these platforms with thousands of clips. Right?
Or the effectiveness goes up because if you listen to people who believe in algorithms, folks that I talk to that work at YouTube and stuff like that, they will say that, look, if your content is good, it'll reach the person that wants to listen to it. Now, clipping seems to be a bug in the system, right? The fact that you can clip and flood the zone seems to be a bug in the algorithm that allows that to happen. Because technically, hypothetically, what the algorithm should be able to do is it doesn't matter if somebody's posted 1 million videos, of them saying something racist. The 2 videos, of somebody talking about, this specific thing you love are the ones you're going to see. That's the appeal technically of these algorithms. The problem right now is that once again, like SEO, flooding the zone seems to work because it creates human signals, right?
I have a clipper right here, Alex.
Oh boy, yeah.
That's like a nail clipper.
That's a great podcasting. Did you do that just for a clip? For the audio listeners, he pulled out what it looked like a toenail clipper.
Toenail, yeah.
Yeah.
I will say the one signal that I think is this is winning in the marketplace. I feel like media is very obsessed with the artifact that it creates, and sometimes the derivatives of the artifact often are more valued in the marketplace. And look, media is a craft industry. You make something and you want people to, and the reality is the clips are just the little highlights are what people want.
The question in my mind about the clip thing is, how do we, in the longer term, balance our time between that which we intentionally watch and sit down to spend time with, and that which we consume through a feed that's really algorithmically delivered clips, and how media businesses respond to that? So, for example, 3 things happened. YouTube said that they were going to change the way that they delivered clips, and they were going to pull them out of the main interface because they wanted the more deliberate YouTube consumption to not be kind of cluttered by clips. Secondly, today in the mobile, I think it was today or yesterday, Netflix is introducing short clips into their mobile app. So you'll be able to consume a feed from Netflix.
So they're gonna chop up all of their programming.
Yeah, I guess so. Chop
Okay.
up the programming.
Makes sense.
And then at the same time, we
It's
hear
also
an endless,
depressing, but
we
okay.
hear an endless amount about these short kind of soap operas designed for vertical consumption that fit in the feed, right? That are like 2-minute kind of novellas or whatever, like just cut up. That's a new type of short form entertainment that Hollywood is kind of really, trying to figure out. And
Quibi was early, as always.
so Quibi is early, and how important is this kind of entertainment into the future, and how much does it displace the other type of entertainment that we normally watch? So I think those are just spaces to watch.
Look, again, the market is saying that this is what is winning. I came across something that 57% of teens and adults now get their news from influencers who basically contextualize the news. They're taking the media artifact and they're making a very short version of it, but also like just giving it like normal context. And the news media can be pissed about this because they're taking more of the value than the people who actually created the artifact. But you got to create those artifacts yourself. You have to compete in this environment. Something that I came across that I found interesting in the cultural realm was that nearly half of Gen Z would prefer to live in the past. I think that's a negative signal in a society when the youngest members are looking to the past, not the future. Tim Dillon, who has emerged.
Who is Tim Dillon?
I don't know. He wears sunglasses and he's some kind of information space creature. He's like a podcaster, kind of comedian guy. He said that only sociopaths can.
He's the guy with baseball hat and sunglasses on always. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, can enjoy living in this time, even though we have all these technological advancements.
Well, that rant of his was a worthy listen, I think. Was a good rant.
Yeah. I think there's some signal here. I mean, it shows up in a lot of the data about how unhappy a lot of people are. It doesn't, like, the numbers, the economic numbers are, completely contrary to this.
Yeah, I think when you have that much uncertainty ahead of you and that much angst and like this observation from Ben, how do you pronounce his last name?
Sasse.
Ben Sasse.
Sasse. He was a Nebraska senator. You should know his name.
Yeah, I don't. So he made this point. So he's like dying, and now he's a truth speaker.
He's dying of pancreatic cancer. Yes.
Right. And so, he's talking about how Congress is failing, and he's making, really honest observations where we're at in the world. And he said, we've never lived in a world where 22-year-olds couldn't assume that the work they did, they would be able to do until death or retirement. And we're never going to have that world again. I think he's right. If you're young, there's a huge amount of anxiety connected to the future. So nostalgia feels pretty good. And nostalgia is, the feeling that the past was better than the present or the future. And so that we see that in all kinds of ways culturally, in terms of, wanting different types of entertainment and wanting to emphasize human connection and community and all the things that feel real. And those are old-fashioned things. And I'm really glad that we're remembering those personally, because the future, while I'm like all in on the future because I feel newly empowered and it's fun, it's psychotic. It's very weird. And this is why I started the episode asking about time, because I'm lost, Brian.
Okay, but I don't mean to be too much of a truth teller here, Troy. But you're playing with house money. You're playing with house money. You're on the back nine. You're playing with house money. If you're a young person, it's thrilling because you have your life ahead of you, but it's also that kind of uncertainty when you're just getting started, I think, is a little bit more crushing. You know who I'm really focused on now? Do you know this guy, Graham Plattner? He's a Maine oyster farmer who is running for Senate.
Ex-military guy.
Yeah, and not like bullshit like Pete Buttigieg, like JAG Corps desk job, like so he could check the box off, but like real like combat tours. And his launch video is like he's an insurgent populist candidate from the left, and his launch video is all him fishing and swinging an axe and stuff. He's got a lot of tattoos.
He's getting the oysters, right? He's going underwater to get the oysters.
Yeah, and plain spoken, beardy. Some controversies. You know, he was a Redditor, and you know, said some. I think at some point he said he was a communist, and that he said some rude things about people. And he also had some tattoo, I guess, that was like part of like the Wehrmacht or something. I don't follow it, but I don't think he's a Nazi.
I think it said beer busts are better.
But he's crushing the establishment.
Well,
candidate.
you know what's interesting? He's brought on this guy, Morris Katz, who was Zoran's strategist in AdMed.
Okay.
And so I think what's interesting who made the video sort of characterizing them as this, you know, ex-military, outdoorsy, oyster grabbing kind of guy that you want on your side. And, you know, did it with the right music soundtrack, and it made you feel like this is a guy that you want in, you know, on your side. And I think what's interesting about it is that, and I was really kind of curious to get your observation on it, because what's interesting is the people that win now in any race, be it political or otherwise, have to become these information space characters. And what's the right way to manufacture them? And so it's not about, you know, a guy on an attack ad on, you know, local television saying, I stand for this and this other person is a crook and all this stuff. It's like, how do you turn this person into a character that travels in clips? And that's the game.
And, you know, he presents like, you know, when he talks about working class issues, and look, he comes from a privileged background. It's like, to me, he's like a redo of Fetterman. I mean, Fetterman went a different direction, really. But another interesting character for, you know, in his launch video, he said, you know, he basically said the enemy is the oligarchs, and that's what he is after. And just the fact that oligarchs is now commonly used in American discourse, I think, is a tell, right? And this guy, he's up, according to some polls, he's up as much as 39% against the Democratic Party endorsed like candidate, the one that like the establishment wants. Then he'll go up against Susan Collins, and so
the candidate the Dems want is the ex-governor, right?
Yeah, I mean, they want a safe, you know, they're not a risk takers. They want to try to like, you know, basically play four corners until the midterm elections are over. Don't take a stand on anything. Don't take a side. But I think on the other side of this, if this keeps going in this direction and it is a massive victory, this guy is going to become, you know, anointed as the direction that the party is going. And I think it's a tell that you got to be a character these days, and you also have to at least present as real. Like I feel again like people sense that there's a lot of fake stuff out there, and the worst you can be right now is a phony. You just can't be a phony.
Well, did you see that in the King Charles speech too? Was that your take?
I liked
He's
King
also
Charles.
been touched by social media. Now he feels like he can walk in front of the Senate and Congress and make jokes.
Yeah, he was pretty funny. You know, I never thought of Prince Charles as a funny guy.
I mean, funny looking maybe, but not funny.
Exactly. He's a royal, so he's not gonna be a man of the people exactly. But he had some good one-liners. He handled the whole Trump thing very delicately and very well. He did the battling of the handshake thing, and you know he's up there, but he held his own. And then he gave Trump like a bell from, I don't know, some Trump ship that was used in World War II. It just happened to carry Trump's name. And so the fact that you got to do this stuff is one thing, but dealing with Trump is like dealing with a spooked horse. You know, you gotta be very, very mindful of that. Again, Prince Charles, funny, good for him. Should we get into good product?
You know, I continue to be, you know, really love that I get to live in New York City and eat at the New York City restaurants. And although today do you ever get, as I age, I get food hangovers. I got a food hangover today. Calvin Yee they had a send off for Calvin Yee, who's a longtime media recruiter. And he's, you know,
He's a headhunter.
He's a headhunter. Anyways, leaving Egon Zehnder or leaving it full time. And so they had a gathering at AB's favorite
AB's
place.
a part owner. That's how you know.
People. It was at the People's Bar, and
It's
there
a
was a whole.
cliched thing to do if you got a lot of got some extra money, is to go in on like owning like a club.
So there was a good cut on the media world there, I would say, last night, because you had, kind of senior media people, past and present. So you had, Roger Lynch showed up, and Howard Mittman, and Andrew Essex, and Michael
I haven't seen
Wolff,
Howard in a while.
Randall Lane from Forbes, and Jason Wagenheim, and lots of people, Nancy Dubuque, lots of people that it was great to see, Jesse Angelo, and this really funny Austrian. When this is my kind of putting two dots together on the Austrians, or funny thing, this guy Werner Brell, that used to be, I think, at Red Bull, and now is doing this motorsport thing. Anyway, hilarious. We convinced this woman that his Austrian accent was southern U.S., which was just kind of a funny thing, and obviously not true, but she believed it. However, I went to Sip and Guzzle for dinner. You ever been to Sip and Guzzle? It's in the West Village, and they serve that $150 like Kobe burger that's made from the trimmings and blah, blah, blah.
Oh, that sounds great.
Anyway, they have like...
the Royale with cheese?
Yeah, they have novel food, right? They have like interesting conceptual twists on the rainbow roll, or, crazy fried chicken that they hand you scissors with in a glove, and you got to cut it up. And then I made the mistake of I'm a big fan of soft serve. I ordered the soft serve just because I wanted to try it. It was enormous, and it was so good, so smooth, so sort of sweet and salty, that I ate almost the whole thing, and I did myself in. But that's not what I'm here to talk about, Brian. And I don't want to talk. I have a song. I have a song for you, Brian.
Oh,
A good product
wow.
song. It's an old song, actually, and probably people that are better versed in, maybe 60s rock might know this song. It was #1 in Britain for a time, for 3 weeks or something like that. And it was produced by Pete Townsend of The Who. But there's a show out called This Is a Gardening Show, and it's on Netflix, and it is made by Zach Galifianakis, who, for some reason, has retreated to the San Juan Islands or something, or, like one of those islands next to Vancouver Island, to live a simpler life and garden. He's really into gardening. So he's got this funny, quirky show on Netflix called This Is a Gardening Show. And it starts with this song called Something in the Air by Thunderclap Newman. And it was, the Something in the Air was this debut
Phil
single.
Collins?
No, it's not
Different.
that.
Okay.
In that song by Phil Collins, I believe, is called In the Air Tonight. Also a terrific song. But
Tragic backstory.
it's a British rock band called Thunderclap Newman. And the song was written by their drummer, who also sings, a guy named Speedy Keen, who was like kind of a figure in around the time of The Who in the late 60s in British rock. And it was a #1 single for 3 weeks in July of 1969. And I think it's been used a lot of times in films and stuff, but I did not know that. Pete Townsend put the band together. There's, this drummer, this great piano player named Thunderclap. He produced the single and arranged the strings and played bass on it. That is Pete Townsend did. And anyway, it's this song that you listen to and you get all the feelings. You get all the feelings of kind of melancholy and hope. It's just a great song. And I couldn't recommend it more highly.
All right, I will check it out.
Something in the Air by Thunderclap Newman. Good product this week.
Awesome. Can I ask you just a clarification question on Sip and Guzzle?
Yes.
Did you get this $150 burger?
They only make 12 a night. So you have to go in at 4 o'clock to get that. I would get that, but I would share it with you. Because,
well, you can make it a happy meal just for a mere, I don't know what that means, but for just a $50 supplement.
Yeah, well, that means you get some nice fries or something weird with it. But I want to eat it, but I can't eat it alone. I just need someone who's going to go there at 4 o'clock.
All right. Well, once we get ironed out this Beehive sponsorship, we can roll by for a celebratory A5 Wagyu Taku Sando. Maybe finish it off with some Hokkaido milk soft serve, golden dippy, saffron.
That's what I had.
Shell.
That's what I had. Oh my God, that soft serve.
A mere $22. New York
Oh my
is
God.
ridiculous.
So also, they have a Japanese lager on tap. Did I say Japanese? Japanese.
You
Japanese.
said lager, which was more
Lager.
alarming.
Lager. Yeah, it's my Canadian. Yeah, that's what you get. That's it for this episode of People versus Algorithms, where each week we uncover patterns shaping media, culture, and technology. Big thanks, as always, to our producer, Vanya Arsenov. She always makes us a little clearer and more understandable, and we appreciate her very, very much. If you're enjoying these conversations, we'd love for you to leave us a review. It helps us get the word out and keeps our community growing. Remember, you can find People vs. Algorithms on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify, and now on YouTube. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you again next week.
All right, Troy.
Good stuff, Brian.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.